I'm Mark Z, and you're watching Thorin, the best interviewer behind Travis Gafford.
When assessing the performance of an owner of an esports organization, so I specifically initially state esports organization, not just a sports organization, because obviously in sports organizations, they have delegated and in many ways compartmentalized a lot of the jobs that an esports owner himself takes on, because a lot of esports owners fulfill the role of talent scout, general manager, sometimes even some coaching elements of directly dealing with players, sometimes even being a HR person, human resources practically. So when you're assessing the performance of an esports organization owner, you'd look at things like, right, what are their accomplishments as a team? How successful have they been? What are the quality of the trades, of the transfers, of the signings that they're able to get relative to where they're at, the investment, the resources they have? How good is their fan following? How popular are they? How loyal are those fans? How willing are they to part with their money for their brand? The strength of your brand, or at least its perceived strength among fans, among other teams, among the league itself, among the esport. But all of the above, even though they're great ways on a day-to-day level and with broad strokes to try and assess the performance of an esports organization owner, I actually think a really telling sign as to whether a team is going to be successful, and in fact, a through line, a thread that goes through the most successful teams in games like League of Legends, is the culture of the team, the atmosphere that pervades where they practice, what it means to join the team, how they practice, what the expectations are of you, what literally success markers, what particular goals you can reach, what the high mark for where you're meant to be is, regardless even of factors like who else is in the league and all the rest of it. The key point here is that all of the above factors that I'd mentioned before ignore culture as a primary factor, mainly because culture, in the terms of I'm talking about it, can sometimes be invisible, or if you don't know how it contrasts to how another org is run, or the other successful orgs, or the less successful orgs, you might not be able to know what exactly are they doing there. So to me, team culture is a massively important element of being a dynastic organization, a team that creates dynasties, that win many championships. Don't just win once and have a good split and have the right player at that time and hit the right meta and have some decent coaching and have a nice run of form in the players. No, we're talking about win many times and over many years and return to the top after you fall off again, after someone else dethrones you, after someone else briefly becomes better. So whether it is in sports or whether it is in League of Legends and esports, I think you're going to find that this kind of a culture is core. It is essential. There's a great quote that I have for you from the legendary NFL coach, Bill Walsh, who was a 3-time Super Bowl champion with the San Francisco 49ers in the 80s. And he was twice named Coach of the Year in the NFL. And his quote goes like this. It says, "The culture precedes positive results, as in comes before positive results. It doesn't get tacked on as an afterthought on your way to the victory stand." So he's essentially saying there that the culture component not only has to come before the results, that's exactly it. It's not even just that it comes before. It is what causes results. It is like a prerequisite for these kinds of results, like consistent excellence repeated again and again. It isn't just something that you throw in along with all the other elements of what you're doing and then just find, that did help along the way to victory. No, it is essential to victory. So first of all, let me just establish this a little bit using some real world traditional sports examples. Then we'll move into the esports realm. So in traditional sports, I'll go for 2 very famous examples that I think really typify people who set a team culture within their organization. And I will admit, both of these particular examples have an advantage that I will get to in a minute, which certain esports org owners have, as I alluded to in the opening, and hence why I think they were able to make a more coherent and all-pervasive culture within their organization, not just within their little department or their little field and job, and therefore only the people they directly touched. So in the NFL, I'll go with the example of Bill Belichick, still currently an active coach of the New England Patriots. This is someone who is a 5-time Super Bowl champion coach, has been, as specifically the head coach, was obviously the quarterback and the defensive coach at certain times in the New York Giants for a couple of championships in the 80s. This is someone who's been to many more championships even than that. I think it's 8 Super Bowls total, maybe 9, I'm not sure. This is a guy who people describe his mentality, his atmosphere he creates as do your job. That is it. It's not about like, oh yeah, I'm good or I'm better than these guys or like I did a pretty good job. It's like, no, this is your job. This is what I ask of you. Do that, irrelevant of who you are. And as a result, he is famously really hard even on superstar players, even the quarterback that won all those championships with him, Tom Brady, one of the greatest players of all time, even legendary players at their position, Randy Moss. Obviously, you could go more recently, Rob Gronkowski. You can go way back in the day to the defensive players they used to have, Rodney Harrison. This is a guy who doesn't give you a break or say, well, this is one of the better players I have. This is an all-pro. This is like a Pro Bowl type player. Nah, I'll take it a bit easier on him. I should really only go harsh on the rookies and the players who are the worst or the players who individually are bad and cost us that game. No, he would go across the board harsh on everyone. He's someone who had a strong emphasis on the fundamentals of the game. It's not just about, right, we're really good, so we can ignore some of that. It's like, no, because we're really good, we have to keep working on those fundamental aspects because they will elevate, emphasize, I would say, be a catalyst to allow the more flashy, more skilled elements of your game to really take you over the top and make you a champion. He's someone who famously, infamously in certain cases, quick to address any flaws he perceives in his team, in a game, in a play. And the reason I say is quick to and infamously so is because this is a guy who has had an unbelievable amount of winning seasons. I'm talking really winning seasons, double-digit games won, deep playoff runs, as I said, Super Bowl appearances. A level of success no one has pretty much ever seen in the modern day of the NFL, and yet he is one of the harshest coaches, and he is one of the guys where when you lose a game, or even if you don't lose the game, it's a close game, and you just made a play at this point in time that didn't be won anyway. He's the guy who's like, right, we've got to address that problem now, because he understands if you don't do that, then the losses will come when you do the same mistake, and then you also do another mistake and lose the game. So if you can tweak those little areas right now, they don't become bigger problems. Players don't become bigger problems when you're harsh on this sense. As a result, he's also been someone who, in his role as a general manager of the New England Patriots, has been pretty quick, again, famously quick, to remove sometimes even Hall of Fame level players from his team. Because he's someone who took this mentality. I believe they said he took it from the guy who was the coach, Jimmy Johnson, I think this is it, of the Dallas Cowboys in the 90s and won 3 championships, which was that it's better to cut a player a year early than a year late. Because if you cut him a year early, if that's what it turns out happens, okay, someone else gets a year of them still being really good, but they do eventually fall off and they eventually would need to be replaced. If you cut them a year late, you're the one who gets a year of them no longer being good and having fallen off, and now your team, that might be a liability that might cost your team games, that might cost you a playoff series, that might cost you the championship, quite frankly. So, as I alluded to, he's someone who's a general manager, so he had a lot more control of this. Someone else who has likewise had actually a very similar type of success and route to the success would be Greg Popovich, the coach, head coach, and GM at certain points in time, early on, and then later on he had a very close relationship with the GM of the San Antonio Spurs. Again, 5-time champion in his league. Someone who has been to many more finals than just those 5 championships. Someone who has had an amazing amount of winning seasons. Again, in the NBA, we're talking about 50 win seasons is the usual mark. And this is someone who has had a similar kind of approach, considered very harsh even on the star players, Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, David Robinson. This is someone who's been willing to cut people from his team who were good after they won the championship because he felt like they were going to drop off after that. This is someone who has been focusing on the fundamentals of the game, passing, playing proper defense, having proper perimeter defense on all the three-point shooters, etc. This is even adapted to the three-point game when he didn't particularly like it because he just wanted to win. So a lot of similar concepts, a lot of similar approaches. So now let's look into the esports world. And in esports, I don't even have to go outside of League of Legends to give you great examples of these dynasties and how the people behind them and the way that these dynasties were handled meant that they had similar types of success to the sports teams I'm talking about. So before we get to TSM, how about let's look, what is the greatest organization in League of Legends history? Easy answer, right? If you go and buy team accomplishments, it's SK Telecom from South Korea. And so obviously we're mainly talking about Coach Koma here, who was there for the entire time. This is a team that's won 3 world championships. Unparalleled. No one else has even won 2. This is a team that has won 6 domestic championships in South Korea. OGN Champions or LCK. No one else is even vaguely approaching that. No one's even got half of that amount. And what have they been able to do within this team? Well, first of all, they have the SK Telecom way of playing the game, even literally the style that they played for many years. And as a result, when you come into their team, you come in and they will shape you to fit their system. They don't say, hey, you were an amazing player in Europe and North America, who you were carrying the fuck out of everything. Peanut, you were fucking sick on Rocks Tigers, mate. Your mechanical ability, you can just pop off and carry the whole game. No. If you come to SK Telecom, you're coming to play the SK Telecom way. Sorry, Duke, I know you were the MVP and you were carry top laner, but in my team, I'm going to need you to mainly play tanks a lot of the time so that we can play these other comps through the bot lane and so Fake can get all his picks. Oh, what's that? What's that, Marin? You're the star player and everything's going to go through you. Okay, to a degree, but we're still going to play this style that we have in this team, and we're not just going to snowball the top lane every time, even if you individually choose to play that way. So this is a guy where the reason why you know you have to play the SK Telecom way is because if you don't, you hit the bench. He has literally, benched big name starters. Huni, Peanut, Bengi. Blank wasn't really his big name as starter, right? In the last year, even the unsuccessful year, he benched Bang, he benched Wolf, he benched pretty much every player. He even benched Faker eventually. He benched Faker for Pyrion. Now, in isolation, I might disagree with that, but I like the mentality that he at least thinks Faker is benchable. That if things aren't going the right way, he'll put a guy in who might not be as good as Faker or as great as Faker was in the past or has contributed as much to the team and their history as Faker, but none of that matters because it's about maybe the guy I'm putting in now can do specifically what I'm asking of him and want the team to do, and in this one game might work better for the team. So he expected excellence from day one. He expected hard practice and that you were going to play it their way and buy into their system. And as a result, greatest team of all time. Then you go over to China, another very competitive region, and the region that's incredibly difficult to win the LPL. You go there and you look at how many different teams in history have won the LPL. And then you go and you look at this one team, and they're called EDG, Edward Gaming. And this is a team that has won MSI. And they won it before it was cool for a Chinese team to win everything. When SK Telecom was still around. They're a team that has won 5 LPL championships. Now, we're mainly talking now about someone else who's a key figure behind the team. It was the coach, Aaron. Now, funnily enough, this guy also has an even longer history of success because he was also the one who established the World Elite Dynasty that won like 33 games in a row, 33 series in a row or something, and won IPL 5 and became the number 1 team in the world back when Koreans had already entered the game, had already become number 1, and this was the only time in history until 2018 that Koreans were properly replaced as the undisputed number 1 team in the world, or I guess it could have been disputed, but some would say the consensus number 1 team in the world. So massive amount of success, and again, with many different players. He went from an era when he had Name, and at the time it was a player called Yu in the mid lane, won LPL championships with him. Then he went on and he had Deft and Pawn, won championship with them. Then he went on after that, and then he got Scout into the lineup as well when Pawn was no longer available. This is a guy who has changed the players, but the success kept coming. The success was consistent, and in a league where you don't win consistently, where teams don't do these streaks of multiple championships in a row, unless you're EDG. Then you go to Europe. So in Europe, we've got 2 obvious ones, right? Ignoring the early days of Moscow 5 and these sorts of things, we're talking about the LCS era here, when things got more professional, and as a result, org owners could have a massive impact on the success of their team. So I don't have names to give you as much here, but you can look at the likes of Fnatic, who've rebuilt literally 3 different dynastic teams now, with the Expeke and Soaz era, and then the Huni and Rainova era, and then obviously now recently with the, I'd call it the Soaz Caps Reckless era. You can look at the team that initially supplanted them, G2 Esports. So again, we're talking about Perks. If you look at a certain point in time, where obviously when they had the most success, we're looking at the Perks, Mithy, Sven and Trick team. This was the core that won most of the championships and became dynastic in that sense. These are teams, these European teams, where, okay, G2 is about Youngbuck, but it's also about Ocelot. Fnatic, there's been many different people involved, some good coaches, some not so good coaches, some good org people, some not so good org people. But the key thing is, in these teams, I don't think they've done as good a job of culture as some of the other examples I gave in esports, and particularly the traditional sports teams and even TSM. But I think that the area that they succeeded in is establishing a team culture that it's only about winning. As in, anything but victory in the LCS is a failure. And actually, it's presumed that you should also have international success as well. Well, obviously, most teams don't even win their domestic league. Never mind have international success. These weren't teams that were told, oh, well done, Fnatic, on facing third place in the league this year. Well done. No, third place is bad for a Fnatic team. That's like, right, what are we going to do to fix this? Does someone need to be cut? Do we need to think about the coaching staff again? Do we need to completely revamp the way we play the game? When G2 didn't win the LCS, what, were they just cool with that? No, they went out and made blockbuster trades. They went out and did the hard yards in terms of searching for players and deciding which otherwise good players actually have to be cut. People who are serviceable, people who've just placed top 4 at a world championship. That ain't enough, sorry. So this is a team that when they recruit players, they're recruiting with a home run in mind. They're recruiting with the idea that you should be an all-pro probably. And if you aren't, and they don't win, then you're probably going to be out the door, right? They don't just hang around with the big names forever and milk the streaming success and the fact that this guy contributed so much in the past, so how could I kick him, or how could I be harsh on him? He used to be the best player in the region. None of those players move on. And you know what? They don't tend to find as much success outside of those teams as they did within those teams. Again, alluding to the fact that this culture, this atmosphere they've created is preceding and in some ways correlated, causing some of this ridiculous, consistent and repeated success. Do you imagine it's just a coincidence that these teams keep winning? Keep winning, by the way, not while they have one lineup and that's in its prime and yeah, they're well coached and they come back to something. No, we're talking about winning and continuing to win and getting back to winning, even when some of your best players or your very best players or your franchise players, MVPs of the league, leave your team. Sometimes out of choice, sometimes not even cut. Even as the game itself changes and roles change within the game, the style changes within the game, even as rivals rise up who actually supplant you, supersede you, have better players, have the MVPs, have the All-Pros, get the success, you then come back and take the throne back from them. And they, as rivals rise up, by the way, and you continue to come back to the top and have success, your other rivals who either beat you or lost to you fall down and are sometimes never heard from, but you're the consistent one. You're the one still up there. That's why Fnatic's still relevant. That's why GTU is still relevant. That's why TSM is still relevant. Even after their worst year ever, they still managed to make the playoffs twice. They still were actually like close to making the fucking finals of LCS. That's the worst split ever. How fucking good is this organization in terms of the historical success? So then let's go and look at TSM. And now we're going to get into the meat of this motherfucker. This is a team with 6 NALCS championships. If you want to say, give us a fuck, it's just the LCS. You all love Cloud9 when they're doing well at Worlds, right? When they're making playoffs. Where's Cloud9's 6 LCS titles? Cloud9 has 2 LCS titles. TSM was in every single LCS final until last year, 2018. Cloud9 came to the LCS only 1 split in. They came in the second LCS split. Where are all their titles? This is a team that won the IEM World Championship, a tournament that had at the time the number 1 team in the world. GE Tigers was in that tournament. Sure, they didn't beat them, still won the tournament. Not many people can say that. Consider some of these facts. There are 0 players that played for all 6 of TSM's NALCS championship winning sides. 0. No connection whatsoever between all 6 championships. There's only 1 player was even present in the starting lineup for more than 3 of the titles, so more than half of them, and that's Bjergsen. Now, Bjergsen's an amazing player and is an MVP candidate almost every split, but that alone doesn't actually make you a champion. That doesn't make you keep going to the top again and again and again and again and again. Not necessarily. There's many players that are godlike players that have had up and down success, that have had amazing careers, sometimes haven't even won the championship. This success we're talking about with TSM spans half a decade. It starts in 2012 and it goes through to the end of 2017. That's fucking bonkers, mate. As like I said, even within that span, their idea of a bad year, by the way, would be just win one of the LCS titles and lose in the final of the other one. And don't do well at Worlds, which, by the way, the majority of Western teams that go to Worlds, even when they're number 1 seeds, don't do well at Worlds. So let's look at this, because obviously the man behind TSM, not behind all their success, but the man who conceived of, enforced, designed, structured the atmosphere and the team culture of TSM is obviously the owner, Reginald, right? Andy Din. And this is someone where one of the hallmarks of his career, like Greg Popovich, like Bill Belichick, is that he has been able, maybe like Koma, I'm not sure, like Aaron, is that he has been able to have complete control because he's the owner. So he's someone who created this culture of practicing properly, of playing together, and of winning, quite frankly. Now, when people say that, that might seem confusing if you don't know the history of TSM, because when TSM first came up as a team, they were popular for streaming. They were popular for being good players, but primarily good players high on the ladder who made guides and were streamers and were popular players. At the time, TSM's whole ethos and atmosphere for fans was the whole, fuck it, Bay life, man. Bay life is about the idea of, what do you think the Bay is like? What do you think the rap from the Bay Area is about? It's all about it's fucking chill and we got money and we're succeeding and fuck all y'all, you can't talk shit to us. It's like, that's not the mentality. It was a bro mentality. It was a frat party mentality. That actually, even though it initially worked for them, had to actually be suppressed and pushed aside. And if you see the people who exemplified Bay life, the Rain Man, Chaos, these people were pushed out of the team. They were gotten rid of. And instead, people who were more serious and who were dedicated to a different ethos were brought in. Because even in terms of team success, in this era, TSM weren't even the number one NA team. They had to rise up in the wake of what was already a dynastic team, Counter Logic Gaming, CLG. CLG were not just the best team, but CLG, as Reginald himself said in my interview with him, something I thought the whole time, I was very impressed he actually had kind of the self-awareness and the honesty to actually say this. CLG had, player for player, the best players, and they had generally much better players than TSM's. Like, TSM had good players in how they worked together and their effectiveness within the game. But if you're talking individually, like who has the best jungler? Who's the best AD carry? Who's the best mid laner? Who's the best top laner? CLG was winning in almost every single role. And yet TSM as a team was beating CLG, was winning championships. And eventually CLG was winning nothing and TSM was winning basically everything. And as a result, they not only outplaced CLG, but they outmaneuvered CLG, and at every turn from about 2012 onwards. And as a result, TSM took over to an emphatic degree. They became the most popular team, CLG's old rep. They became the most successful team, CLG's old rep. They became the most consistent team, CLG's rep, sort of. They became the most enduring team. CLG who? Who the fuck is CLG in 2019? I know TSM, our team, we still expect to get back to the top, where if they finish third again, we will all meme on them and laugh at them and say how they failed and how they fucked up and how the transfers were all bad. Third place would be fucking dynamite for CLG in 2019. So let's look at some of the things that Reginald did to establish this team culture, which preceded the success, as I alluded to, because believe it or not, it literally did. Like, the main things he started with were before the LCS era. Everyone remembers in 2012, they won, 5 or 6 domestic tournaments? But actually, most of the things they started to change came before they won those tournaments. So obviously, one thing Reginald immediately implemented was shot calling. And we're talking about strict shot calling, because at the time, it was based around him. He was the mid laner, he was the star player, hence the team solo mid name. And as a result, when you played in his team, in Reginald's TSM, you did what Reginald told you to do. You didn't question, I don't know if that's good, I don't know if that's right. Like, I'm going to make a counter call against that. No, let's not do that, actually. You don't go to him after the game and say, oh, what you did there was all fucked up and shit and all that. Like, shouldn't definitely. No. You play around him, and in the game, you do what he says. Now, you could take a selfish angle on that and say, well, that's egotistical, or he's narcissistic, or he's so immature, he couldn't give anyone else a say. But you know what? In those days, ignore the context in that sense and just look at the results. Is it any wonder this team won out consistently over a team that had better players than them, better history than them? No, because at that point in time, a lot of teams didn't have a proper shot caller. CLG didn't. They all just argued amongst each other in the game. Or they all thought, well, we're all fucking brilliant players individually, so we'll just beat them individually, right? I remember a story St. Vicious once told me that when CLG figured out that they were really bad at dragon fights, they just gave up dragon. That's the mentality they had as a team. Not like, let's find out how to improve at this. Let's get a shot calling system set up around this. Let's have what we call in Counter-Strike, like protocols. What are the orders in which we do things? And what's the flow chart of what you do in response to something? We've got to really address this problem. They're like, now we'll win the game another way. Fuck it. Let's play it inefficiently. Let's play a suboptimal style. By the way, do you want to know the irony of that particular scenario? So they had the best players. They had problems with dragons. So they just gave it up and thought they could win anyway. TSM was infamously good at getting the first dragon and would team fight to the death around dragons and not pull off and let other teams get them. They understood that with the goal that they had in that sense, That was a way to get gold and to get ahead in the game without even having to get kills, without even having to beat people in lane at a time when everyone used to say, smash lane, smash the game. No, mate. It ain't win lane, win game. It's actually about winning as a team. Now, sure, you can argue TSM was too focused on team fighting in an era when actually then it became about wave manipulation, understanding map pressure, and how to freeze, and then how to fast push, how to snowball. Yeah, okay, that's strategical angles. But in terms of like the approach of all playing around the same style and being on the same page, TSM definitely had that. They were actually one of the best Western teams in that respect, hence why they had so much success. Then you look at the fact that after Bjergsen replaced Reginald, even though I think it was a bad move, because Bjergsen didn't turn out to be a great shot caller, he's decent, he can be good at times. Encouraging him to be the shot caller, I can see the logic behind it, the rationale. Because if you are already the best player, and you're the mid laner who's in the middle of the map and can roam around and sees the middle, all the map and can easily go to one half or the other, because you're already in the position, in theory, to be the best shot caller, it doesn't often work out that way, but more importantly, because you're the best player, you already command respect anyway. It's already going to be hard for people to argue with you when you're fucking better than them and you're calling the thing to do in the game, right? How are they going to go, I think that's wrong? And you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? Then you're going to look at the fact that in terms of practice, Reginald demanded that they practice hard. Now, if you didn't practice hard, well, we already know what happened to the Rain Man, right? He didn't want to practice. He wanted to stream more. Hey, let's not take it seriously, man. Baylai, fuck it. Yeah, guess what? Rain Man very quickly got his ass kicked out of that team. You look at CLG. CLG in Season 2, and especially Season 3, when the LCS first began, it was pathetic the way CLG would fuck around. In scrims, they'd all be arguing, they'd be dicking around, they'd be leaving fucking TeamSpeak, not even playing the scrim out because they had an argument with each other. They wouldn't be turning up on time sometimes. When they were around and they weren't practicing, they were just streaming for fun. Literally, during the first split of the LCS, when they actually, by the way, didn't even make the final, and didn't even make top 4, in fact, in the first LCS split, guess what they'd been doing during that split? Because they thought they were some of the best players and should be one of the best teams anyway. And how the fuck can these teams below us ever beat us like Vulcan and Korst, etc.? I mean, GG University at the time. So they were dicking around playing Diablo and Street Fighter, even on stream, letting people know they were doing all this shit instead of practicing. Now, the reason why it's so key to practice hard, diligently and with consistency and with purpose to it is because that preparation, as people like Greb Popovich, as people like Bill Belichick will tell you, as people like Korma will attest, they get you those extra wins that you otherwise might have given up when the mistake later comes back to kill you. They get you those lucky wins where having all the fundamentals covered and having people with a high confidence in their preparation and the plan and the system of how we're going to play with each other means that you get what seems like a fluky moment, but you know what? There's a reason they say winners make their own luck, right? These are the moves and the approach and mentality that gets you back to the top rapidly. You don't wait a few splits and wait and see on this player and he's starting to be a problem, but let's see how that goes. He is a good player. No, you make the harsh decisions. You make the key, vital, executive decisions that mean after you have a bad split, you come right back to the top. You know what the most amount of splits that I've ever gone by without TSM winning the championships is? The most they've ever gone, 2 splits. Someone else, Cloud9 won 2 splits in a row. CLG won 2 splits in a row. Team Liquid's won 2 splits in a row. No one's ever, never forget someone winning 3 splits himself, but collectively the entire league has never been able to go 3 seasons without TSM winning a split. Half a decade we're talking about here. There's a reason for that. And it's not the players. The players are changing. This is someone who, in line with the practice, got a team house early. Now, sure, now we can all complain that team houses aren't really ideal, they burn people out. You know what? They're a damn sight better than people just sitting at home playing online. And then when they're not in the game with you, you have no fucking clue what that guy's doing. He could be going off fucking around doing all sorts of stuff, having a terrible diet, partying all the time. You have no clue what that guy's doing. So by getting us to a team house early on, because they got their team house at the end of 2011, before they had all the success in 2012, the whole reason why was 1, to practice more diligently, 2, sure, to help the streaming business, have it all in one place, but 3, they specifically moved, remember guys from the Bay, the West Coast, moved from that coast to the East Coast to a house in I think it was like Rhode Island, New York or something, and they moved to the East Coast because at the time, European teams had risen up to become the best in Season 2, and so they wanted to be able to practice against those. Or they'd already risen up at the end of the Season 1, obviously Season 1 championship. So he moved there to be able to get better practice, to have a better practice environment, to have a more serious approach, to ensure that if you're part of TSM, you are committing to something. You're not just on the best team because you're a good player and you're going to fuck around, win some games there, lose some games there, win some tournaments, lose some tournaments. Let's see how it goes. You're committing to being the best that your team can be. And this is in an era, by the way, where streamers were getting megabucks, where the CPM for a streamer was way higher and the amount of streamers was way less, but the game was still big, and therefore you could make megabucks if you were a hot shot, a double lift, big fat GG. These people could make mad money. So of course you don't want to spend all your time practicing with purpose and scrimming and going for the competitive side. At the time, the competitive side didn't even win you that much money. It was more about prestige at that point in time. It's more about your own internal validation. Then let's look, as I said with the Bill Belichick, with the Greg Popovich example, that angle of let's cut a guy a year early rather than a year late. Nobody in League of Legends history has made more brutal kicks than Reginald. So let's go through them. Starting off with the Rain Man. This was a guy who was a good player. He was one of the best top laners in NA. He was a popular streamer. He was one of the people who embodied the Bay Life spirit, which was the branding of TSM at the time. But you know what? He didn't fit the emerging culture of being about competitive pro side and being a professional, playing and practicing in a professional manner and going all out, being willing to sacrifice everything to be the best competitive player you can buy, best esports competitor. He didn't want it, so he was replaced. Even when the team was one of the best teams at the time in NA. They'd already won a championship. They'd already been able to do well even against European teams. Then you had Chaox. Chaox was a key piece. For people who don't know, first of all, his sort of like efficient AD carry style was really key to their team fight style. He was a consistent player in lane. He was also someone who synergized well with Xpecial, who had a similar mentality to Reginald to the game. He used to take part in the drafting that the team had. There's a guy who played a key role and was also another proponent of Bay Life and a popular player. But you know what? Since his form had dipped a little bit and he was engaging in behaviour that was unacceptable of a professional and of a TSM player, he was kicked because he didn't fit the team culture. How about the Odd One? You're going to think to yourself, wait a minute, the Odd One, didn't he choose to retire? Was he pushed? Was he did he jump or was he pushed? We can get in that debate another time. I'll just go ahead and say this. I'm assuming he was cut personally. At the very least, in terms of Reginald coming to him and having a hard conversation and say, I'd like you to step down or let someone else take over. Because at the time, the team clearly needed a mechanical upgrade at the jungle. Xpecial was the Odd One rather was a good player and he did his job well. But were they going to win worlds with the Odd One as their jungler? No, of course they weren't. So this was a guy who was a faithful, consistent piece for a long time, but they needed an upgrade, so a brutal cut was made. Or they convinced him to retire. How about Xpecial? Another core member. I could argue, personally, I think he was actually the greatest individual player who was on that Season 2 era of TSM when you look at their whole careers. But he's someone who, when he got to Season 4 Summer, he didn't like how harsh the restrictions were that they were placing on players. Like, don't play other games, don't spend a lot of time watching a lot of movies, mainly practice on solo queue and in scrims. And so because he basically was kind of a little bit petulant, he didn't want to do it, and he kind of didn't manage to convince Reginald otherwise, he was viewed to not be a team player, he was viewed to have expressed insubordinate behaviour. And so even though he's a legend, even though he's arguably one of the best players in the team, I thought he was the best support player in NA at the time, he has to go. And indeed he did, and they facilitated a transfer to another team. How about Glebe, his replacement? Everyone forgets him, right? Well, the reason why, no one's ever revealed this, I know it's been revealed here and there, the guy basically, once he got into TSM, allegedly fell apart as a person, couldn't even maintain basic aspects of what a normal person would need in their life to actually be considered healthy, both mentally and physically, and was in really dire straits early on. That's part of the reason TSM was doing really badly. He was a terrible fit for a high pressure, high expectation team, and you saw he never went on to do anything after that. He was never in another great LCS team or making like deep runs, except no. Because they identified, and they were correct, he wasn't the right sort of personality to be in TSM. How about the fact that the only time you can really criticise Reginald for the recruitments, or more importantly, not making the right harsh cuts, is when he kept Dyrus, who by the end of Season 5 was pretty bad. He kept Santorin, who when the meta changed just wasn't as good and on the international level wasn't as good. And he kept Lost Boy, who was just at the end of his career, was never going to peak again, couldn't speak enough fluent English to be a shot caller, and was taking up a key position within the team. Now, the reason he kept these players so long, though, is because they hadn't lost. They won the LCS back-to-back. They'd won the IM World Championship. When did he cut them? After they finished second in the LCS, and after they didn't get out of groups at Worlds. Those are considered successes for other teams, coming second in LCS and making Worlds. Other people would keep their lineup for that reason and say, well, give them another year, see how they do. Maybe they'll improve next year. No, he realised at this point in time, right, they've stopped winning now. And in fact, maybe I even let it go slightly too far. Maybe I should have cut that off earlier. But you know what? Let's make the harsh decision now. Let's cut nearly all the team. How about the coach? Loco Doko had been in every LCS final when he coached TSM. And he was cut when he lost his first final. So they could go a different route. So they could get someone else who they thought was more of an authority figure, who could do more out of the game coaching as opposed to just the X's and O's and the analysis. Loco Doko had won 2 LCS championships with TSM. This is a guy who had been a key part of, I guess he hadn't won all, he had won all the championships with them until the last one. Why did they cut him? Because they attempted to get a sports coach. They brought in that guy, Casey Woodbuck. They thought that in doing so, they'd have a proper structure of like the strategic coach, the head coach. They were way ahead of everyone else and understand what the fucking Koreans have had the whole time. Way before anyone in the West understood. Now, it didn't work. Okay, that's because they were the first to really try this like outside coach guy coming in and being a full-on coach. You know what? As soon as they realised he wasn't the right guy, they cut him before the split had even ended. They didn't even wait for him to fail in the split. They quickly cut him because they could tell he wasn't the right guy for the job. They cut Doublelift. Someone I think should have 2 MVPs under his belt already in the league. I could argue he's the greatest NLCS player of all time, including Bjergsen. I could make that argument. They cut him even when he was still winning championships. Why? In his case, because of international results. They never got it done when they went on the top level. A perceived issue with when they took a split off. Was he committed to the concept? Maybe that meant he didn't have that many years left in his career. So you know what? Again, cut him a year early rather than a year late. They cut Svenskeren after he had won 3 LCS splits in a row. You think you're getting cut from Cloud9 if they win 3 LCS splits in a row? Child, please. Contrast that with other teams who have won and with other teams who claim to want to be excellent and claim they'll do anything to win. Bullshit. He's cut Biofrost to make way for a super team pickup, to upgrade a team that already was the best in NA. Because he thought he had a chance, as he did, to get this Venomythy bot lane who seemed to be the best in the West and had just had pretty decent results overall. They'd made the MSI final, obviously. They'd won many championships in Europe. This is a harsh decision. It's a brutal cut, but it's one that they felt like had to be made. And on paper, how can you argue against it? Think about the atmosphere that Reginald created for TSM. TSM is about winning domestically. Even coming second can get you cut from your job. Coming third is the end of the motherfucking world. And when they came 5th to 6th, if you think those players weren't under pressure, it was insane. There's no such thing as a bad split if you're in TSM. You can win or it's a bad split. There's no bad split that's like an actual bad split. This is a team that is seeking international success. Yeah, they haven't had it. I get that. Aside from the IEM and one time they made top 8 at Worlds, they haven't really had proper international success. But it's not as simple as saying, oh, they just failed and it's because of these factors. No, it's in spite of these factors. I'm not really sure why it is. Psychological components, some of the players were chokers maybe. You haven't had that many opportunities necessarily collectively for all the different lineups. There's many different reasons you could give. And like I say, it's not like the track record for all the other NA teams and all the other EU orgs is amazing. Yeah, a couple of them are outliers and have amazing results. Cloud9 just getting out of some groups and this one time making top 4 isn't like some godly performance way above and beyond TSM. I mean, for a start, they had some easier groups sometimes. TSM demands excellence, not just as a team, individually. If the team wins and you're not good enough and they think you can upgrade you, they'll upgrade you. Even if you're Bjergsen and you Doublelift, MVP candidates, best player at your role, they will change you if they think that you are in the way, if you are hindering international success, which is the next level they want to be at. Contrast TSM and all the things I've just told you, the harsh cuts, the dedication to practice, like upgrading players even when you've actually had what for other people would be success. The rest of the LCS in NA was a fucking joke for the first few years. Like, you might say, excuse me, Thorin, can I draw your attention to Cloud9 and Jack Etienne? Jack locked into a godlike lineup of, at the time, semi-pros who instantly became champions practically from day one in the LCS. He didn't construct that team. He didn't coach that team. He didn't create a special atmosphere that made them that good. They were that good before they even got in the LCS. I think Meteos didn't die once in the promotion aspect to get into the LCS. No one could do shit against him. They were already smashing TSM in scrims. When actually that team started to fall off in results and TSM responded with their own moves, like getting Bjergsen, like getting Lost Boy, like getting Loco Doko in, took Jack Etienne a lot longer to figure out what he was going to do in terms of coaching staff, to figure out what environment to create. You could argue he only just got that together more recently with Reaper and allowing him to make the benches. He didn't make harsh cuts as typically or as often. He kept people around like a bleeding heart, like, let's keep trying Buddy Fufu out. Let's let's keep trying this other player around here. Like, oh, it doesn't matter that he's like lacking confidence and he seems to be buckling under the pressure. Let's keep him around for a while, shall we? It's only now that they've developed a culture in Cloud9 that truly is a championship culture, even though they actually have one for many years now. CLG arguably had the worst culture at the beginning of the LCS, like I implied before. Tied with Curse, I'd say. Because I'll give Curse some honourable mention for literally having like shouting matches on camera on stream. It took CLG years and key removals, key retirements to finally clear the deck enough of the corrosive personalities and environment they'd created and start a new environment with a guy who came from outside of League of Legends, Coach Chris, and then later on he kind of loosened the jam jar lid for Tony, for Zix to come along and to do his coaching. And then they got rid of people like Doublelift, who was a much better player than anyone they ever replaced him with. But they did so to allow Aframu to take more control of the team and to shift where the focus was and to make it more of a team. Or they made their team more like TSM of Season 2 than CLG of the past. CLG of the past went for really good players. Now, people don't realise just because they weren't winning LCS don't mean they didn't have good players. They had some great players even in the LCS era. But they didn't win shit. It only lasted a couple of years, even when they got the success in CLG. They haven't repeated it. They haven't gone back to the top again. They haven't maintained. They've let everything in their org slide. They've now fallen away to complete mediocrity, where, as I said, if they came third, that'd be a fucking great finish for CLG. If they could even make Worlds, job done. You did a great job. It's about the best you could expect. They haven't upgraded. They have stuck with players forever. They've stuck through bad splits. They've said, it's fine. You did a good job. You're eating the right diet that this guy tells us to in your house. The coach says you're doing well. That's fine for now. Hopefully you can do better. They don't demand excellence like Reginald and TSM has, because they haven't set up the same kind of team culture. And guess what? They haven't had the same results. This video was kindly supported by Dean Tanglis, Andreas Snazore Westerlund, Gardner Wilson, OllieJ, Tobias Bernasconi, NateDOhDoubleG, James Harding, Kyla Harris, Travis Greb, Daniel Yordanov, Tristan Jones, and a special thanks goes out to Jerky's Minion. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for upcoming content of mine? Perhaps you'd like to ask me a question for my monthly video AMA. Do you want some teasers to see who the next guests are for my talk shows, for my interviews? Maybe you'd like to take part in a monthly esports discussion with yours truly. Well, put your money where your mouth is at the Patreon link in the description box below and join the Scrilluminati today.